Studio and introduction to Studio, and we have downloaded and installed the Studio, and we build our first Mule application, and then we started discussing about Mule application and all. So this is your Studio. Studio will contains this is the place where you can develop, design, develop, test, compile, build, test your applications. So this is the place for that. Okay, so your studio will contains sm- small windows. These are called views. You can maximize a view and you can minimize a view with this two buttons. Okay, so these are all the views. So view one, package explorer, is to create your project and to see your project. View two is your what was its name? Canvas, where we will do our actual work. View three is Mule palette, where we will use this for drag and drop. View 4 is properties. View 5 is console. Properties is something as it's once you drag and drop a component or an event processor, and then once you select that, it will show you the properties window. Will show you the properties related to that. Okay, and view 5 is the console. When you are running an application, it will show you the logs of the application. So today we are going to discuss about the first example only. Along with running, we will go to debugger and we'll debug the application. Okay, let me delete this application and then recreate it. So when you are deleting, if you do this checkbox, it will completely delete from your system as well. If you uncheck it, it will only get removed from Studio, but actual copy will exist on your workspace. And create new Mule project, you can do in three different ways. So ideally, it is shown at first time, but you can ignore this in two different ways: new button Mule project or file new Mule project. So any option is fine. So click on that. You will get a wizard for new project creation. And here provide a project name called a hyphen first hyphen example. All my sessions, there will be a character appended prefixed at the starting to make sure we'll have all examples in the order. So it will create the project with many folders and the project structure inside. So your Mule project, it contains one or more Mule configuration files. When you create a new project, your configuration file exists in the src main Mule uh, folder. Excuse me. So here you will do, when you open this in the canvas, here you will use your operations or scopes, or you can say simple components to design your Mule application. And so now we will use this Mule application and then we'll start designing. So already we have discussed yesterday, these palettes are, it contains many components. All these components are grouped together and they called as a module. And if you see, this is a this is the components for the core. So these are basic module that will be used in all the application irrespective of a specific thing. So these are called core modules. So this is called a core module, and inside the core module we have components, and there is another module there is another module, um, HTTP. So all the HTTP related components are grouped together and they called as a HTTP. There is another module, sockets. For socket related thing, they keep in a sockets module. By default, when you create a project, a core module will be added, HTTP module will be added, and then sockets module will be added by default. If you don't want a module, you can right click and remove a module. Suppose if you want to add the module, how should you add the module? There is an in the modules, there is on top of that, there is a first option called add module. When you click on this add module here, you will see the list of existing modules. In next session, whenever we are planning to work, whenever I am planning to work with the file, I need a file module I have to add. So these are the feature modules existing. If you observe, whenever my when I click on the add module, whenever my mouse moved to this feature section, this place got changing and it was showing some message to us. Drag and drop here to add the project. So when I keep it here to add the project, this module to the project, it's asking us to drag and drop. Suppose if I want to work on the file module, I will drag drop this, then this file module will get added it to the my project. Now if I now in this case I don't want it, so I'm removing it and this will go from here. Okay, so this is how your Mule application palette contains different components, and all of them are grouped together. Um, all of them are grouped together, and they called as an modules. And inside module, we will have different components. And then the next one. So we are going to create our first example. So when we create an example, we'll use Mule configuration file. So in the Mule configuration file, we will write our code. So the code, the basic component inside Mule configuration file is a flow. Whenever you drag drop an event processor in the mule configuration file, automatically a flow will be created. So first thing is, whenever you are starting, you should start with the start event processor. So start event processor means which accepts a request from outside world and then hand over that request to the next event processors. So for every module, there will be something like a start event processor. For HTTP, it was the listener. So I'm drag dropping HTTP listener. So when you drag drop HTTP listener, by default, a flow will be created, and by default, a flow will be created, and inside the flow, the first activity will be your HTTP listener. Suppose if I remove this, your flow exists like this. Your flow contains, this is your sample flow. So now I am adding a listener at the source point because listener is a source event processor. Now once you
Uh,
have added,
I have one doubt. By default, error handling will come with event listener.
not event listener, with the flow it will come.
Okay.
Okay, we'll talk about error handling after our implementation completes. There you will get to know everything about it.
Just I'm asking whenever you are to drag the listener, error handling will come. That's why I'm asking.
Right. So this is with the flow error handler. So whenever I drag drop a listener outside of my any of the flow, then it will create the flow automatically. Your error handling is coming with the flow. Okay. So now this is the listener. So time being, what you will do, don't go till this point. Just I'm trying to give some hints about the next topics. So that's why I'm showing like this. If you understand, it's fine. If you don't understand, just drag drop a listener and then try to provide the listener configuration. So first of all, whenever you go and do, first try to click on this drop down. If you don't have any configurations available, then go and create a new configuration. That is what it is saying, create a new configuration. and click on the plus symbol, you will get all the details as you know about host and port. So if you want, if your 8081 is locked, then use 8082, 8083 until work until whenever you get an open port. If address is already bind or if a port is already used, then go for the next port. Okay, and simply click on plus and then you will get 8081 and zero, all zeros as the host. Say okay, and now whenever you come here, don't click every time plus, click on this. If you have it, use it. Okay, if you don't have the connector, it will ask you to create a new configuration, connector configuration. So if you want to edit that, so you should click on edit symbol. When a new configuration was created, so the connector configuration elements will store in the global elements. So that is what we have seen a minute back. So global elements, your connector level configurations will be saved, and configuration XML is something like related to your XML code. Message flow is the one where you will do drag and drop. And then listener, there is a red mark showing, it means some required thing is not defined. So required attribute path, when you keep a mouse on that, required attribute path is not defined in the HTTP. Go here and then go to the place attribute path is required. Path here you are seeing a red color. So try to fill that. So say hi is my path, and see here there are no errors now. And then click outside. This all errors will be removed. And then whenever I received a request, I want to add a logger. So your logger is part of your core module. So here you'll have a logger, but in the modules, if you want any components, if you are using regularly, you will add them into the favorites. By default, all these are added to the favorites. So you can use it from here or just go to the core modules and search for the logger. So logger one, just I'm leaving it, and or you can provide your own message in the logger saying flow started, request received. Okay, and then I want to send some message to the user, whoever calls this. For that, I will use set payload. Same thing, go from the favorites or go to the core module or look for it. If you never find that somehow or you overlooked it, just type something in the search bar above, you will get that. Okay, if you want even same for the logger as well. Okay, so you can, whenever you are adding the things, you can add at the starting, you can add at the ending, wherever you want, you can link this up. Okay, I added second logger, so ended. I'm adding a second logger at the end. For the first logger, I have added flow started, request received, and then flow ended. And now I want to add payload. Now I will add the payload. So now I have the provision to add it any place. Either I can add it here, here, here. So I'm adding it here. Okay. And then set payload. When you are setting the payload, it has some kind of value, some expression mode. It was enabled f of x. If you see a colored symbol, it means expression mode enabled. Or if you see this f of x as like pressed icon, then mm, it means f of x enabled. If you click on this, then it will behave like a normal payload. Here I am sending a string, hi, welcome to MuleSoft. Okay, and then save this and run your example. So to run your example, right click and run your example. So in the last session, we have discussed about this studio, building the first application, and then about Mule applications and flows. Every Mule application is a combination of one or more Mule configuration files. Each Mule configuration contains a flow. Your Mule application or your Mule flow receives the events, process them, and then route them means sending them or showing the direction to go. So route them to the other endpoints or event processors. So Mule application accepts and process a Mule event through series of Mule event processors plugged together in a flow. Plugged together, what happened? Plugged together in a flow. So your Mule application contains a flow, and this flow will receive an events, and then it will process the events. Once it processes the event, it will hand over to the next event processors. So they will process it, and then final result will be returned. So inside a Mule flow, there will be a source event processor which initiates the execution of the flow, and the other event processes are something like they will transform the data, filter or enrich. Means if you receive two fields, making them as a four fields is called enriching, and processing the events and its messages. So we are going to see, I mean, in detail in the next coming topics. And then we have discussed the same thing about the flow. Mule application basically contains one or more flows. A Mule flow start processing an event when it received by the event source. So event source is the thing which receives data or request from the external world, and then from that point onwards an event will be started processing. So a flow either contains all the processing stages or routes the messages to the other flows. Even if you have other flows in your code, you can pass the event to the other flows as well. If you have a flow with a big so time being, we are using three different event processors. If we have 50 event processors, so we cannot create our flow like a goods train. So we have to break them into in logical modules, and we'll create separate flows as well. And flow and XML we have already seen, and then this is about your Mule application building blocks. These are the main building blocks of your Mule application, and main building blocks of the Mule applications are components. So these are all the components, and all the components information is available over here. So go here and then open this. So this is the link. Do save this link. So it will show you all the components of your Mule documentation, core components. It will explain you about each and every component. Okay, these are the Mule components, and here is the link for the core components. If you click on this core components, it will show you and explain you about all the components. Okay, so do try to open this and try to at least try to read it, or at least try to see the subheads of it, and try to understand the event processes that we are working. So what are we working? We are working with logger, set payload, and also only read those things, and other things try to identify the subheadings. And these are our event processors or building blocks. So they will execute our business logic and the message flow through your Mule application. So with the help of these components, we will create some logic to address some kind of business solution, so business problem. So we will solve the business problems by using this component. So what is our business problem? Our business problem is integrating the systems. So to integrate the systems, you should accept the data from one system, and then you have to transform that data into a different system, different format, and hand over to a different system. That is our main job here. So as it's an integration tool, what we will do, so we'll be there between two systems. So system A and system B, they don't know each other, or they don't know the language they speak, or they don't know the data formats they will carry. So you are the person, you will stay here and say this guy only knows some text files data, and this guy only knows about some XML data. And these two are exist on different technologies. You as a middleware guy, you are capable to receive this data, and then once you receive this data, what you will do, you will write your logic in a flow. So something like our flow will be horizontal, not vertical. So here you will receive the data, and then after receiving this, you will read the data. After reading the data, you will convert the text data into whatever the requested format, that is XML data, and then you will hand over the data to this guy, and you will hand over the data to this guy, and then at the end, you will set a message. You will send a message to the other guy saying that, hey, I have already sent your text data to the XML system, or you receive text data to the XML data, something like that you will do. So this is our business problem. So for doing this, um, to provide this solution, you will use this event processors, or you will use these components to build your logic. So these are the components are separated into categories: core, core components, modules, and connectors. We'll see that what is module and a connector. By default, every project includes HTTP and socket modules. And if you want, you can add additional module. So you can add like this. With this help, you can add your additional modules. So this is what we have discussed in the first session, and then we will complete our example execution. So how we can construct the path. To construct our path, go to the listener, and then I should create one file for you, right? So this is to construct to construct the path. How do we construct? So to construct the path, we should first know the protocol, and then it is the syntax to separate your protocol and where is your application running, localhost, and what is the port. To separate the host and port, we will use that. And then what is my path? Say hi. Okay, and use this path, and then send the request from the browser. Your application is in running mode. You could see this red dot like your server is running, and but it is not showing anything, it's not executing anything. The reason is it's not received the request. So from external world, you should initiate the request and then click on this, say hi. Now your system receives the request, and then here you see that flow started, request received, and then flow ended. And then whatever the at the end of the flow, whatever the value is available in the payload, that will send it to the caller. So if you want, you can override this again with the set payload, and then you can change your message and then do save it. So once the application in the running mode, 99% times it will reload it. Sometime it will throw an error, or it will abruptly stop the server to reload to. So due to some number of times you do reload, and you will get some kind of error messages at the time of reloading. Just ignore this. Only you should check is at the end you are getting this message or not. So if you get this message, means it's restarted. If not, stop it and restart it again. Just it will save few minutes of your time, and then send it again. Same message you got again. So your latest payload got returned. Okay, it means your pet set payload is overriding. So this is about your first example. And today's session we will discuss
I have
about,
one doubt. Can we
yeah,
pass the set payload information to first second set payload?
I didn't get your question.
Yeah. In set
You
payload
sent
one,
a
we have
you set a value here in the payload, and you want to
yeah
pass that value to the this one.
second. Yeah.
So already it will hold that value. You will get to see now. Okay, and your questions will be answered in the next topics.
Okay.
Okay, that we will cover, but not exactly the way you have asked. But
Okay.
the core idea, passing information from here to here, is the core idea, right? So that
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
get addressed.
Okay.
Now, till now, we have seen how to run your application, but we haven't observed what is happening after this or before this, what is happening after this or before this. So that we can see with the help of debugger now. So now terminate your application in the running mode, and then we will see the debugging of an application. And before that, we'll try to just cover the few points and then we'll go here. So topic 3, debugging and file connector along with the Mule event model. So we'll start file connector and the Mule event model in tomorrow's session. We'll end our session with the debugging. We have another 15-20 minutes. So debugging. So the concept is debugging a Mule application, connectors and modules. So debugging a Mule application. So we'll see this debugging a Mule application. Tomorrow we'll see the other things. So debugging a Mule application, Anypoint Studio. So as a yesterday session, as I said, in your studio, your IDE is not only notepad like writing the code, compile and run, it will support some XX features. So in that one of the X is your debugging. So Anypoint Studio Visual Debugger allows you to run your application in a debug mode. So what happens if you run your application in the debug mode? You can add breakpoints to the processors and step through the application. So what happens in debug mode? Your application stops its execution and when the debug point encounters. So it means if you want to see what exactly happening when you do set payload or when you do logger, how do we see? We cannot stop the application to see it, right? So in that place, debugger will help you to pause your application. I think it's not the right word, stop. So I can make it as pause. Pause means just a small break. So it pauses its execution when a debug pointer encounters. So first start your application in the debug mode, and wherever you want to pause the execution, and there you can add a debugger point, and then there you can identify what are the values you have received and what are the values you have set and what are your values you are going to send it to the external systems or returning to the browser. That values you can see in the debugger mode. So we can watch the event properties and values, and some other points that we'll see. So by default your debugger listeners incoming TCP connections on the port 6666. It's not an relevant point to us. So by default it will done. We don't need to do anything. If you want to know more information about virtual debugger, guys can go here and get the information, more information about the debugger. So whenever I send a link, do save in a notepad. Once a WhatsApp group is created, I'll create a WhatsApp group like this for every batch. There I will post the messages. So once a group is created, I will share these links in that group so that it will be there for a quite bit of time. So next thing is going to the debugger. So debugger concepts. So now this was with the Studio 7.5 version. If you want, you can change this to 7.6. So this may continuously change from now and then. So 7.6 version, and it will give you the information about more information about your debugging concepts. Okay, and then running a project in the debugger mode. So to run a project in the debugger mode, um, again go to the same link as like your first applications. So run debug mode. No, this is not working. 5 only will work. Running in debug mode. Visual debugger. Studio debugging. For version to version, they'll change the documentation. Debug project in the studio. So already they have given the steps here. So right click on your project, package explorer view, and then select debug as a Mule application. Studio asks you the permission to switch Mule debugger perspective. So that way we'll see. So to run the debugger, what we will do is go to your studio, Anypoint studio, and then right click, and there is an option to debug. So your application will start in the debug mode. Internally, it may use some ports called 6666. So we no need to worry about it. It was automatically taken care. So this is about debugging a Mule application. So what is this? Confirm perspective switch. What is perspective here? Let me click on S and let's see what will happen. See, your entire views got rearranged. So there are perspectives in your IDE. So here are the perspectives. So each perspective has a purpose. What is that purpose? When you are designing an application, When you are designing an application, all these perspectives are arranged in a way that it is suitable for design. So what kind of view size or view place um, you need to design to happily design your application. Your views are arranged in such a way for the design perspective. So all views are arranged for in particular way for address some problem or for address something like design debug modes. So your views are all tied together to a perspective. So that is called a perspective. If you want to open a perspective, click on this plus button here on the top right hand side corner and click on that. It will go there. So Mule design is the default perspective. It will open when you open your studio. And you click on debug, it will open you the debugger. So all your views are arranged in a different way with supports for the debugger. Okay, the top you will have a debugger. Top you will have a debugger, and then you'll have a console here. You will have some kind of evaluate breakpoints, mule palettes, something is here. So we'll see how this will help in the debugger. If you want to switch the perspectives, option 1, click on this and choose the respective perspective. We all will tie to mule design and mule debug, so you don't need to worry about the other things. Okay, so either you can switch from design to debug or debug to design. When you start your application, if you are in a design perspective, your studio will ask to switch into the debug perspective. When you switch here, it will come here. So if you already a perspective is opened, a perspective is opened, you can switch to that perspective by click on this open perspective and then click on this button, click on open, you will move to that. So once the perspectives all are opened, what you will do is you can click here to switch them as well. Okay, so that they will automatically open. Now we are in the debugger perspective. Now your application is started. Now let me send my request to it. So I am sending the request to it, but I am expecting that the application will stop at some point too. It will take a pause at some point, but it's not paused. It completely executed as like run. So when you want to pass your application, you should do one thing. You should tell to the debugger where it want to pass. Then only it will pass. Otherwise, if you don't show any symbol to pass, it will not pass. So it's something like when you are going on a main road, you will have a traffic signal, right? It means that you have to, it will show you a red color to take a pass and when you are driving. So something like that, to you should show some kind of card here that is called a breakpoint. Right click on the event processor and then add breakpoint to add a breakpoint. And if you want to remove a breakpoint, you can remove it, so it will completely removed. Or if you want to disable for some particular amount of time, you can click on this disable breakpoint. Okay, so remove the breakpoint. So it is a first status. So to add a breakpoint, add it. Now your application will stop here whenever, pause here whenever you get a new request. So go to browser and send the request, and then your application paused here. And now observe there is a blue color square rectangle kinds of blue dashed rectangular was there. It means that your application is paused here. By the time my application is executing, it has many things, starting with the name of the event processor that is currently going to execute, and then something called attributes, and something called correlation ID, something called payload, something called variables that we are going to see. And now console, clear the things, and then if you want to, so you have paused here, you should tell that, hey, okay, done, just move to the next step. How do you tell that? So on the top of your debugger, there is something like an arrow which shows you like a stepping symbol from here to here. So that is next processor. So when you click on this, it will move to the next processor. It will execute. What will happen after it executes? As it's a logger, it will print a message in the console. See here, a message got printed. Flow started, request received. Now the next processor that is going to execute is set payload. Now check the set payload. There is something called payload here, which these names are both are relevant names. Let's see what happened when set payload is executed. Will there any change here or not? So set payload. Okay, so when I do set payload, something called payload is here that is storing the value that I have given, right? And then next set payload, I'm updating, I'm again assigning something, what will happen. So when assign a set payload, so again, what will happen? So both are same event processors. I use it two times. What is the way it has used in the what is the way first it was executed here, in the same way it will also get executed. So expecting is that my payload value will get overridden, or it may throw an error saying that, hey, I already holded something. So either one of the thing may happen. Let's see what will happen. So it will override your set payload. So set payload is something like there is something called payload. So in that payload, you are setting the value to that. So that is the value you are passing. Whatever the value you are passing, that value will go and store in the set payload. And the next one and the last one is the logger. So once the logger is done, so identify what is the value in the set payload. Hi, welcome to MuleSoft again. So I'm taking a screen capture to see at the end of the process. And then the last one is with this, my flow execution completes. And what will happen is after executing, whatever the value is available in my payload, that will get returned to my browser. Okay. So anyone has any question? I got a sound. Okay.
Yes, sir.
No
I
questions.
have a doubt. Sir,
Okay, you
I
unmuted
didn't
yourself.
understand the set payload, sir. Just can you explain again about the set payload, sir?
Set payload is something like just you are setting value to the payload. Payload is something I don't know kind of thing like a variable here
Hmm.
which stores something. You are setting something to that. You are assigning something to store it.
Okay. And
Okay.
you are told about if you want to start the process. Actually, you told me to stop the process. If you want to again start the process, told to arrow some click the arrow button. Now after that, what you have to do, sir?
No, it's something like you stopped the processor here, right?
Okay.
Say so it's something like when you are going on a highway, if you see a red light, you will stop. Then when you will start again, when you
Um.
see a
uh,
green light,
yeah. Okay.
there is some kind of instruction we will get to move to the next. So in
Hmm.
the same way, when you stopped here to move
Hmm.
to the next, you will use this. You should follow my this guy mouse. So this is the next processor. That is what I'm clicking. So it was moving from here to here. So I will show it again. Don't worry. So
Okay.
what I was explaining here is, so set payload value was set to the payload, value was stored to the payload. When I execute, when my process completes, whatever the value exists in my payload, that will get returned. So my process completed, logger got executed, and it printed a message, and then a message is returned back to the browser. Okay. So if you want, I will close this and open this again in a different window. So
Set payload only respond to the request.
It's not responding to the request. Set
Okay.
polled is a component. What logger is doing here? So I sent a request again. Now my process stopped here. Now I observed, okay, there is nothing in the payload, there is nothing in the vars, right? So I
Yes.
observed there is nothing here and here. And now, okay, now go to the next step. I should tell my program to go to the next step. How do I set that? Here is the place where you click on this button, next processor. So the current processor will execute, your dotted line will move to the next one. It means now your control is here. So first line executed, second line. Sorry, first event processor is executed and it moved to the second event processor. Okay, so now here you are. So your debugger, it will show you where is your current control now. That is what it will show you. Okay, and this was the message it will printed for your logger. So now set payload is something which is used to set some value into the payload. Think like there is something called payload. Inside that you are setting some value. Okay, what is that value that you are providing here? Okay, that will set here, and then again I'm using another set payload, so it will override the existing value. So I'm clicking on again next, so it will move, and then logger, it will print the log message, and then it will leave the flow and your browser will receive the message. So this is how we will debug our application. So when you are learning the things, don't run and see. Every time when you are run your application, you should run in debug mode and see what is happening at each and every event processor. Okay, so tomorrow we will see what is that payload, what is that variables, what is that what is that attributes and all in a concept called Mule event model. So there is a concept called Mule event model. There we will explain about everything in detail. And before that, along we'll not cover this as is. Mm, will not cover this as is. With to explain this, I will take an help of file. So we'll try to read a file, and then um, we will try to understand the Mule event model. Okay, we'll discuss in detail about the Mule event model. What is this? How should you access this? Suppose if someone sends a data to my system, to my flow, how should I accept that data? Such information we will see. So there are 3 to 4 examples, or 2 to 3 days we will spend on this. We'll spend on this file and Mule event model as well. So let me see last batch how many days we have discussed. Batches, practice docs. So we spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 examples we spent almost 5 days on that. Initially I spent 2 or 3 days, 2 days on that. Day 4 it was completed, but from the last batch onwards we have changed that to day 6 or day 7. Okay, so we'll discuss in detail about each and everything about Mule event model and as well as the file connector. So with these concepts, till this concepts, you will have complete pure basics will be covered. So make sure you guys will practice. Why I spent 1 day in debugging means every example that we'll discuss in our class will be run in the debug mode. Okay, it's not on the running mode and showing the output, traversing to the entire flow and seeing each and every component. You should understand each and every component. Okay, so with these sessions, you will completely get a clear picture and understanding about the things that we are going to discuss in the next sessions. Okay, so that's all for today. If you have any questions, you can stay back and the remaining people can drop off. And one final announcement is So your free sessions got ended. So those who want to continue, just do check with Girish. He will provide you the assistance for the next sessions. Thank you.
Sir,
Yeah.